life has been hell from that day forward.
The police interrogation of the Ramseys you've never seen before.
A Christmas morning photo of the kids.
Detective Tom Haney questioned Patsy, who at the time was taking medication for both anxiety and depression.
In the previous video, we spoke about photos the Ramseys may have had on their camera that could be cross-referenced to police crime scene photos and potentially find some insight through that process. This isn't just conjecture. It's not academic. It's not theoretical. There's a specific instance, strangely peculiar, where the police bring this up with Patsy, and, well, her reaction says it all. Haney. Well, this photo was on your roll of film in your camera, and on the same roll is the next photo, a Christmas morning photo of the kids, Patsy Ramsey. Uh-huh. Yes? Oh, God. Haney. Before we talk too much about the next photo, if you can, Demuth, you want to just take that out for a minute? Haney. Like I say, this was on your roll of film, and it's not exactly the same photograph that was taken by the police. Patsy. Uh-huh, yes. Haney. But it shows Patsy. Yeah. Haney. Pretty much, I guess, or can you tell me when that would have been? When that photo would have been taken? Patsy. I don't have a clue why anybody would take a picture like that. I don't know, inaudible, who took that picture. Haney. Well, it's on your roll. Patsy. It's on my, Haney, of film on your camera. Patsy. I don't know. So Patsy can't explain it. Then there's another photo Patsy's asked about she also can't explain. Demuth. Did anybody besides you use that laundry room? Patsy. Sometimes Linda would wash if we were washing comforters or something, because those were big, heavy-duty laundry machines. She'd take the things in there, rugs and things, and wash them down there. Demuth. Okay. Haney. So you don't recall taking a photo of her down there. Now think of those words. Patsy, do you not remember taking a photo of JonBenet down there in the basement? That's the laundry room in the basement. Patsy doesn't even verbalize her answer. She just shakes her head. Haney, if she was doing something really cutesy or something, would you maybe run and get the camera, take one of her? This implies that the picture they're looking of her is JonBenet appearing to be cutesy in some way. And Patsy then says, of her in the laundry room. Haney, uh-huh. Patsy, no. Now you're going to notice how reality shifts just in this short piece of questioning. And a lot of the Ramsey cases like this. The moment you think you've found a strand, the moment you're rubbing your hands, I've hit the jackpot, this is huge evidence. It sort of fizzles into a straw man. Or does it? Haney, did you take some photographs of JonBenet in the basement laundry room? Patsy, no. Demuth, you had presents in the basement laundry room, right? Patsy, right. Demuth, so you wrapped presents in the basement laundry room, right? Patsy, right. Demuth, so you were down in the basement laundry room pretty often. Patsy, depending on what time of the year it was, yeah, uh-huh. Demuth, and do you remember the photographs being photographs of JonBenet being in there? Patsy, taken of her in the laundry room, and this is where it's a bit of a curveball. Demuth says, no, you're saying, no, not photos taken of JonBenet, photographs of JonBenet, of her, located in the laundry room. So just photos of JonBenet lying in the laundry room. Patsy, oh, in the laundry room. Oh, I don't know. There was a bunch of stuff. Wrapping stuff and everything. I don't remember any photographs. Demuth, is there any reason why there would be photographs of JonBenet located in the laundry room? Are you feeling a little confused now? Patsy, no. Were there? Did somebody find them there? Demuth, if there were, would that be out of place for you? Patsy, it would seem to be out of place. I kept wrapping materials, and sometimes I worked wrapping station, Christmas paper, and Demuth. Who else had access to the laundry room? This is where it really gets kind of interesting, because the police are persisting. Who else would go in there? I know everybody would have access, but who else would use it And then, would the boys play in there? Would John go down there? Now, it seems to be either would someone go down there with photos of JonBenet, right? And you might say, yeah, well, what's the harm in that? But it does seem like certainly Haney is talking about taking photos in the basement laundry room of JonBenet and their cutesy photos. And these investigators are saying, would someone else besides you do that? Like the boys or John? And then the same question reiterated, did anybody besides you use that laundry room? And yeah, we need a loud boom noise. Sometimes Linda would wash if we were washing comforters or something, because those were big, heavy-duty laundry machines. She'd take things in there, rugs and things, and wash them down there. Demuth, okay. Haney, so you don't recall taking a photo of her down there? So the question we're dealing with here is, what kind of photos are we dealing with? Photos that were just taken somewhere else and then taken down there, or photos taken in the basement of JonBenet looking cutesy? And it's very hard to know what we're dealing with without being able to see these images. And notice how Haney is explicit. If she was doing something really cutesy, would you run and get the camera and take one of her? Patsy says, of her in the laundry room. Haney says, Patsy says no. That is what is being discussed here. In this analysis, we want to approach the idea not so much of which photos were provided decades after the fact, but the Ramseys' habits and other aspects related to the photographic narrative. We'll also finally identify the third clue in the third photo.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until.
So in this analysis, we're going to deal with 7 dimensions to the photographic narrative, 7 separate dimensions to the photographic narrative, and then deal with this third photo right at the end of that. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Bear in mind, there's also a photo, it's called 17.7. We really need to deal with that photo as well. We're not going to deal with it in this analysis, but it's so important, and it's also pretty mind-blowing. I think my co-author wrote a blog post on it on December 9th, 2016. So we've been sitting on this information for some time. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please hit the thanks button. Thank you to the many of you who did hit the thanks button. I saw someone even left $100 thanks. So thank you so much for that. And let's get started. Number 1, camera equipment. Based on the number of phones in the Ramsey home, there was a phone in the kitchen, the basement, John Ramsey's office. There's also a cordless phone. We have a sense of a modern, clued-up family in the mid-1990s. Don't forget there were also televisions and VCRs in the kids' bedrooms, an alarm system, as well as an intercom system inside the house. There was even an elevator in the Ramsey home once upon a time. Now think about it, with all of this digital equipment, kind of state-of-the-art for the mid-1990s, and John's business, which is in computers, which is in tech, doesn't it make sense that they would also have some of the latest camera equipment? And guess what they do? Now I know I said we won't deal with photograph 17.7, but I just want to mention very quickly something, a little excerpt that comes out of John speaking about this photo with Smith, where John says, I don't know. It was, the only time we got the cameras out were typically at Christmas time. And there John is making a very critical, important statement. He's saying, every Christmas we took the cameras out, and it was a very important event for us. And note he says cameras, plural. It would likely be John's camera, Patsy's camera, and a camcorder. And that's true. We know it's true because we've seen the photographic evidence, the photographic narrative from the Christmases past. The question is there a ghost from these Christmases past that haunts the Christmas of 1996, in the sense of, where are you? Where's the ghost of Christmases past in the Christmas of 1996? Now let's be a bit more specific and deal with number 2, John's cameras. Have a look at this camera on the glass table. This is very, very close to where the ransom note was left. It's also very close to where photograph 17.7 was photographed. Also, those fragments above on the shelf are business checks that John left lying around. Then in this image, you can't see it very clearly, but behind the flashlight that draws your attention, is the video camera on charge. And if you look slightly to the right, you can actually see a cordless phone. I think that's a cordless phone that is being charged as well. So those cameras are out and about. They're not packed away. They're out and about, but they didn't really find very much on them. Number 3, the Ramsey book. The Ramsey book talks about why they didn't record video. So it's kind of a big enough issue that they actually deal with it. They sort of defend their failure to take photos on that Christmas of all Christmases. And you might say, hey, it's not a big deal. I didn't take photos on my Christmas. They didn't. It's not a big deal. I think it was a very big deal. It was a very big deal because Patsy was about to turn 40 years old, literally about a week later. It was a very big deal because it had been an incredible year for JonBenet. She'd won all of these pageants. And of course, it was a massive big deal for John, who was celebrating Access Graphics. In a very big sense, the whole family were in a celebratory mood. Besides all that, Patsy was celebrating being alive. She was in remission from cancer for, I think it was 2 years. And so if anyone would want to celebrate life and being alive and Christmas, it would be Patsy. And I mean, they go to so much trouble that Christmas, decorating the home, getting all these gifts, and then they don't record anything. And so this is from The Death of Innocence. John writes, JonBenet was excited and wanted me to take home videos. Well, I said, rubbing my chin, I forgot to charge the batteries of the video camera last night. They're all run down. But here is our regular camera. I can take a few pictures. You get over there next to mommy. And so based on this narrative, it corresponds to the actual narrative, which is one photo of JonBenet and Patsy. Isn't there a photo of Patsy and Burke, or John and JonBenet, or John and Burke, or John and Patsy? And it would have been interesting if the authorities had examined that camera and seen if it was truly not charged. Anyway, he goes on to make a big deal of it. Since the death of my oldest daughter, Beth, I hadn't wanted to take away from the moment at hand by stepping out of the scene to videotape or photograph it. I felt that life was too precious and went past too quickly to interrupt it. Now, if you think about that, when did Beth die? And then think about the Christmases that occurred subsequent to that. Didn't they record those Christmases? Didn't they take any photos since then? So how does the statement really wash? And I mean, I agree with it. I myself have been in that position myself, where you say, I want to live in the moment rather than preserve it for later enjoyment. There's an interesting scene in the movie The Something Life of Walter Mitty, where a character played by Sean Penn is about to photograph, I think, a snow leopard, and then decides to enjoy the moment instead. On the next page, he's still talking about it. He said, I still was not up to looking at the home videos we had made all of those earlier Christmases when Beth was still with us. This is page 5. I thought about it, just how special this Christmas morning was. So he's basically saying, this Christmas is so special that I'm not going to take any photos. And so he says, I snapped a few pictures of the children with their open gifts lying around the room. I had no way of knowing these would be the last photographs I would take of my youngest and most defenseless daughter. And how many photos did he end up taking? Something like 3. And there's no photo, for example, of JonBenet with a life-size doll or Burke with his Nintendo 64. But I think, and at this point you might say, you know what, I don't think the photographic narrative is a big deal. And I think then there are other people who might say, yeah, I think it might be a big deal, but if it is a big deal, to what end?
To whatever end.
Number 4, video from Christmases past. So if we go through the archive of footage, can you see there's video from several Christmases past? I think there's 1993, there's 1994, Not sure if there is from 1995. There's photographs from one Christmas after another, and I think one's also got to ask, what about the Christmas party of December 23rd, which was a big do? For Santa Claus was there, all their friends were there. It was a big party. Would they not have recorded that? Number 5, total photos of the Christmas of 1996 inside the Ramsey house. Now, what we really want to do here is look at the total amount of photos taken during that Christmas, and then just compare them to the absolute smorgasbord of photos from other years. And what is so interesting is in documentaries, when the media covers this, they, in order to show the Ramseys over Christmas, they end up using photos from Christmases of other years. That's how much footage is available of other Christmases. There's even like a classic photo shoot of the Ramseys sitting in front of the fireplace, and they're all dressed up in a certain way. Patsy sort of got some kind of album or book on her lap. Burke is sort of trying to peek in from the back, looking a little bit awkward. The point is this absence of evidence of a sort? What do you think? The Ramseys liked taking photos. And as I say, just to reiterate, Patsy had nearly died, so memorializing memorable events was almost a mission for her. John had a big thing to celebrate. His company was going great guns, had reached this milestone. He'd even been in the paper. He'd had someone photograph him and, publicize that in the newspaper. So they had a lot to celebrate that Christmas, the Christmas of 1996. Then there's interrogation footage. Now, think about footage that would probably be in the Ramseys' custody, something that belongs to the Ramseys in terms of their own case file, something their own lawyers would have provided them, right? And the interrogation footage is footage of John, footage of Patsy. Wouldn't there also be footage of Burke? And of course there was, and that was finally released 20 years after the fact in 2016. Who released that? The Ramseys or the police? Or was it made available through a Freedom of Information Act scenario, which often happens as well? And that brings us to number 7. Is there any new footage in Netflix? And the answer is yes. There's a little bit of a small amount of new footage where you see Burke and JonBenet skiing or sort of coming down the snow in a sled or in a sleigh, and then the sleigh tumbles, and then the next thing you see John in the vehicle, JonBenet in the back, sort of ensconced in a little hoodie, and then Burke coming in through the door and sticking his tongue out. That's also brand new footage, just showing how the Ramseys liked to document when they were having fun, when they were enjoying themselves. The Ramseys also hired around 3 photographers. JonBenet even had her own sort of photographer. There was plenty of footage shot by others. And so, again, what we're dealing with here, or I guess the question is, are we dealing with a kind of manipulation by selectively withholding? Selectively withholding what? Photos. And then I guess you've got to ask, well, why would you withhold these photos? What are they going to potentially show? And photograph 17.7 is a really important example of that. We'll deal with that separately. And so have a look at these 3 images. There's a pineapple in one of them. There's a hair ribbon in the other. And what is in the 3rd image? Well, 2 bicycles. And initially, the Ramsey story was that only 2 of the Ramseys received bicycles that Christmas, JonBenet and her mother. And if you look carefully, you see 2 bicycles in this photo. And what do you notice about these 2 bicycles? Then I also want to end off with this image. It's an image you've probably seen 100 times. And then I want you to look closely at this image. Look down to the bottom left corner. What do you notice? And we're going to be dealing with that narrative, the bicycle narrative, the narrative that we haven't discussed yet, in the next episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.